So if we consider that, and see how important it is for society as a whole, how would we re-envision our educational system where a lot of this is set up? What would we change so that education would really help us to become human, to develop both the aspect of inspiration and also the pragmatism to get things done in this inspired way?
Well, there's an old saying in traditional Chinese culture that the mark of every golden age is the children are the most important members of the society and teaching the most revered profession. So we all know that the education system is the window into the future in a very fundamental sense. It's the only institution in society that has, let's say, a 60, 70, 80-year time horizon, right? Inherently in its work. The impacts you have on those young people will have an impact in your culture over many, many decades. That's not true of any other institution. So it's kind of obvious how important it is. So for that reason, a lot of us have put a good deal of our focus on education. And I think there's plenty of evidence. We have a big meeting coming up in July where people are going to come from all around the world to just hang out amongst extraordinary innovators in education. It really can be done in regular schools, public schools funded by the government, nothing unusual. A lot of the concentration in the last 10 years has been on poorer schools, because it's one thing to say, well, you got a bunch of kind of upper middle class kids, but then you've got these kids in the city. It's the plight of kids growing up in our cities is pretty severe today in America. So you have to work in those places. You have to work where the toughest but in some ways the toughest settings aren't that tough. People know things have to change. I believe that if you kind of looked at key institutions and you say, well, ultimately this is about individuals, it's about teams, but it's also about institutions and organizations and communities, that whole continuum. If you looked at key institutions and you kind of rank ordered them in terms of importance, the two that would jump out at you would be business, because it's so powerful, and education, because it's so important. So those are the two places we've always concentrated our work on. The good news is they really are full of kids. So what does it take to transform a school? Well, a couple of basic things. We all know them. First is respect. You really must respect the child. You must respect that the child has their own way of understanding, their own way of learning. The industrial model of schools, which became the model for the world starting, almost 200 years ago now in northern England, northeast United States, and now you go to a high school in Beijing. It's no different than a high school in the West. They're all the same curriculum even. Same grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, all industrial model. And all about standardization. It's an industrial model, right? It's about an assembly line. And yet you have the fact that every single human being is unique. And if you want to transform the education process, you must start first with profound respect. I mean, you watch little kids, any group of adults, they'll go to some adults and not others. Very quickly. They'll go to the adults who listen to them. They immediately can tell if an adult really gives them respect. They may not even have the word or the concept, but they know energetically the difference in a conversation with an adult that's like this and a conversation with an adult that's like this. So the first foundation of any learning process that involves multiple people is respect. The second is what I already said, that individual nature. It kind of goes with respect. The nature of everybody's consciousness and sense-making and learning process. It's very different. There are some kids, some people who've got to touch things. They're very concrete learners. If I'm not touching it, if I'm not doing it, I can't learn it. There are other people who actually can take in a lot of information. They're more kind of quiet in their style. So people are all very different. Some people have to learn interpersonally. Other people, it's enormously distracting to have too many conversations because I can't concentrate. So that's the variety. Secondly, it all comes back to what we all know about learning. I mean, we know a lot about learning if we only applied it. Where did you learn to ride a bicycle? Well, you learned to ride a bicycle in the places you wanted to ride a bicycle. Now, you might have started on a grassy field, so when you fell down, you didn't hurt yourself too much. But you didn't want to ride on a grassy field. You wanted to ride with your friends down the street or to the playground, right? So all learning is contextual. You learn and develop a capability in a context where you're trying to accomplish something. And thirdly, we all know how you learn. You learn through doing. It's the only way anybody ever learned anything. trial and error. You do it and it doesn't work, which means by implication that to learn anything, you have to be very comfortable with failure, because you fall off the bicycle a lot more often than you ride the bicycle when you're learning. And we all know this. So the thing is, it's not complicated, but to actually imagine a school that's based on profound respect, where the learning is really about the child's life and learning things that really matter to them in their life circumstance. And it fundamentally respects the importance of action and reflection as the foundations for any learning process. And the fourth is that it's always both individual and social. So your relationships with one another are really, really important.
On our website globalleadership.tv, you will find additional footage, other dialogues with innovation leaders from around the world, and also the hands-on practices that help them and their organizations to move from inspiration to real change.